on the behalf of the SSC team for this session, and today we have honored to have with us Dr. Balaji Devaraju sir, and as a speaker, he is an assistant professor in the Department of Civil Engineering, IIT Kanpur, and I'm sure you all know him. So, as you all know, this is the time when we have to decide which career to opt for and how to proceed. And so, we all are pretty much confused right now, and we are aware this is not easy decision to make. And hence, we thought of conducting this session and requested you to guide us on why to opt for masters and what all opportunities we have after that. How can it give a boost to our careers, and how interesting and exciting research domain is. So I want you to enlighten us with what how can it boost our careers, and what do we expect from this and everything. Like we are all pretty much confused. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Janvi. Yeah, good morning to all of you. So my name is Balaji, and I'm in the Geoinformatics group of the Civil Engineering Department. So first of all, thank you to the SOC group for inviting me to talk about this. I've been itching to talk about this since the day I've come here with all the students. So I think it's a great opportunity for me to interact with you all. So how do we go about this, Janvi? So I will give an introduction about myself, and I have a few points that I made that you guys posted on the poster. I think there were some 3 questions, so I made some notes on it. But I guess you also have some questions collected from the students. So how do we go about that?
So we can first start, you can first start with, you can speak about masters and all, what all opportunities we have, all the topics you want to discuss on, and then after that we can go on to the questions.
Okay, fine then.
At the last we can.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so then I made a small presentation, so let me show that to you guys. Show my screen. Okay, so the beginner's guide to masters, I think that's the topic for today, but I would rather say it's the bachelor's guide to masters. That would be my take on it. But nevertheless, I think whatever said and done, we are going to talk about what is this graduate student life, or what is research life. So my research domain is called gravimetry, or satellite gravimetry, or even more general would be geology. So that is my domain specialty, and I basically work on these pair of satellites that observe the gravity field of the Earth and its temporal variations. So that is my bread and butter. Yeah, and what is this? What do these satellites do? They basically measure the distance between the two. And this distance between the two satellites keeps changing because of the gravity variations on the Earth. Because you know that satellites fly because of gravity, and if you change gravity, then their positions will change. And that's exactly what we're doing. So this is my main research domain, and here we are interested in how masses are changing on Earth. So, for example, the Greenland ice mass loss, Antarctica ice mass loss, or groundwater exploitation, everything can be seen by GRACE. And it has been a sort of a revolution in Earth observation. Yeah, so that's one of the things. Then again, my further specialty or my expertise lies in signal processing. How do we process signals that emanate out of a sphere? Yeah, so that is my expertise. and I've done some research on these things. So, for example, how to do filtering and what does filtering do to data on a sphere and so on. On the application side, I'm more interested in how can we use these temporal variations of the gravity field to understand Earth better. So I think most of you might have heard about the hydrological cycle. Huh?
Yes, sir.
It's a very simple concept. It's a budgeting. So you have input, which is precipitation, then there is output, evaporation, and runoff. And after that, whatever remains is storage. So this storage keeps changing, and it's a lot of water that keeps changing. So then when you change mass, you change gravity. So obviously, your satellite or everything will see it. So then you can try to understand what is happening to this hydrological cycle. And we measure these individual components separately. So precipitation we measure separately, evaporation, runoff, and total water storage. So when you combine them, you sort of try to understand whether our theory is right, or whether do we understand everything all right, or are there too many errors in our measurements? So how do we improve them? So that's the sort of research or understanding that you come to. And of course, yeah, so some results here where we try to estimate, because runoff is a very important variable, and that is not available throughout the globe. Yeah. So for example, if you see, we measure runoff in all the Indian catchments, but we do not share it publicly due to some political reasons or some other reasons. So then, therefore, how do you estimate such, such quantities which are not being shared or which are not being measured? This is what we try to do. Yeah. Then, of course, the other thing is you satellite measures something and you want to uh, observe it. You want to extract information out of it. There are several strategies to do it. So yeah, so you could also work on the satellite data directly and try to achieve what you want to achieve. So this is also something that I do, and I think again, with the heritage of signal processing, we also do sampling theorem. This is an ongoing project, so where we to understand how the orbit of a satellite, yeah, its ground track samples the Earth, and how that affects our information content. Yeah. And recently we had this International Association of Geodesy Scientific Assembly, and we presented some of our work where we looked at the ocean observations. We use a technique called satellite altimetry, where we measure the height of the oceans. So, and also you might know that most of the coastal areas will have a tide gauge. So you can basically compare what the tide gauge is observing and what the uh, altimeter is observing. Because the tide gauge sits on the land, whatever crustal motion that the land has will also be observed by the tide gauge, but it will not be observed by satellite altimetry. So in a way, you can understand what is happening here. Yeah. Then with a few bachelor students, like many of you here, we did some work on trying to understand what does the ocean mass variation look like. Yeah? How does sea level change around India happen, and what are its major features? Yeah, so this is also something that we do. And we also do some, what do you say? I wouldn't technically call it instrumentation, but it is sort of instrumentation. We take these off the shelf commercial off-the-shelf units, yeah, and then we combine them to form what is called as a low-cost GNSS receiver. A typical GNSS receiver and antenna setup would cost you somewhere in the region of 20 lakhs, 25 lakhs. Yeah, so we wanted to use some low-cost GNSS receivers to sort of bring that down, so that we could have more such setups throughout the globe. The interesting thing about GNSS is that it can measure so many things. It can tell you about the position of a particular place, how it changes with time. It can tell you about the troposphere. It can tell you about the ionosphere. Yeah, it can tell you also about what is called as the local area. I mean, if there are any reflections in and around you, it'll you can use that to determine the surface properties. So there is tons and tons of applications of GNSS, especially permanently set up GNSS stations. So this is also something that we do for our research. Yeah, so typically a setup looks like this, that you have a solar panel and you have a low-cost GNSS connected to a single board computer, and then a receiver and then an antenna. And this is what you do basically. Yeah? So that's more or less a short gist on what we do. So I think predominantly we do a lot of signal processing on the sphere, a lot of earth observation, and a bit of instrumentation. So this is about my research. And then now I would like to go into the topic of the day, which is why should you do what do you call masters? Yeah, and there were three questions that were posed to me. Yeah, so let me open that.
Why to opt for masters? What are the advantages? What to
Yeah.
expect while opting for dual degree? And what are the career prospects after your masters?
Yeah. Okay. So before I even comment on any of these questions, I would like to say that I think many of this, whatever I'm going to say, it's my opinion, yeah? And then it does not have a solid statistical evidence or does not have any scientific evidence. So it's, if at all there is evidence, it's purely my life experience. And that's about it. So I'm going to share you my experience or my viewpoint. So I you should take more of these viewpoints and probably come to a statistical conclusion. Yeah, you would be better off. Anyways, so let's begin with the first question. Why do you have to do masters? So I think if you look at the pyramid of education, you start with with school, then you go to you do your undergrad, and then you sort of do a graduation, then you do a doctorate, then you sort of become very wise if you're going to use that knowledge to gain wisdom. Yeah, so this is sort of the pyramid. And if you notice that after school a lot of people drop out, after undergraduation a lot of people drop out, after masters a few people drop out, and so on. So the number of people who want to go to the top really becomes smaller. And you also notice that when you were in school, you were being taught all the details, huh? Science, social science, math, um, then history, language, everything. But then as soon as you came to graduation, so then some of these were left out. So you, depending on what your inclination is, whether science is your inclination or social science or linguistics, so depending on that, you would just spread out. Yeah. So then again, when you do science, whether you do engineering, you do medicine, you do mathematics, or whatever you do, I think you're going to compartmentalize. Then again, you do masters. So the fundamental idea that you have to understand is that when you finished your 12th, what prompted you to do engineering? Yeah. So whether it was money, it was job, or it was the pure joy of doing engineering. Yeah. So one of the three must have, guided you. You must have had some people who are doing I would say, a job in the IT, or who are running an engineering company or something else. So you must have been prompted by that, or you must have heard something about, let's say, okay, if I do something like this, I might be able to do so and so. So these are the things that might have prompted you, or you might say that, okay, this is my only way to get a job and money. So this is what I'm going to do. So purely out of, so the same three things come to your master's. So maybe you had a wonderful lecture on one of the topics and you say, okay, this is the subject. This is my favorite subject. So when we say civil engineering, or for that matter, engineering in general, when you study, not every subject is going to inspire you. Not every subject is going to interest you. Yeah, that's a given. So you will always have a favorite subject when you do what do you say, when you do your schooling, or when you do your undergraduation. For example, for me, mathematics was always fascinating. Physics was always fascinating. And when I started wanted to do an undergraduation, I was very much impressed with satellites and Earth observation and so on. So I wanted to uh, be a remote sensing engineer or an Earth observation scientist. And I had an uncle who was doing research in nuclear resonance imaging, nuclear resonance imaging, and he was my inspiration to pick up research. But of course, there were also other factors that were involved. But I think these were the major ingredients to pick up research. So, like that, you will have a certain subject that's your favorite, and you want to learn more. So, the first and foremost criteria is why do you have to do masters? Is either it has to be one that you like that subject a lot and you want to learn more. Number two, you want to have a better qualification than undergrad. So the times that we live in, I think here, nearly 90%, or I mean, at least the national census says 50% of the population has an undergraduation degree. So that means every other person, yeah. So that means if you take two people, one of them is going to be an undergrad, the other is probably a school dropout or something like that. But for some other states or some states, it's even higher. I mean, if you take 10 people, out of 10 people, there are 8 people who are undergrads. So in the times gone by, let's say in the 80s or in the 70s or even in the 90s, I think it would be hard to find a lot of people who are graduates. If you take 10 people, maybe 3 people, 4 people, or even 2 people would be undergrads. Yeah, but that situation has changed now. Or even if you can go as a timeline, you can watch movies you pick a movie from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. Yeah, and you just look at what do they talk about salaries, what do they talk about graduation, and so on. So you will notice that I think in the 50s, anybody who has finished high school, yeah, would be considered very good. If you take 60s, anybody who has gone to a graduation, I mean, it would be, I mean, undergrad, any undergrad degree would be considered very nice. In the 70s, you started talking about engineering. Then in the 80s, of course, yeah, again, engineering was at its peak. Then in the 90s, I think then people started talking about masters. And in the 2000s, I think now uh, a bachelor's is not sufficient anymore to diversify yourself or to make yourself unique among the big crowd. So it is important to specialize in something. You need to have a unique quality where things are going to be interesting for somebody. So another perspective is that I think we are now in an age where artificial intelligence and machine learning is occupying a lot of industrial space. So there used to be a time when we were looking for skilled workers or skilled manpower. Now, many of those skilled manpower would be replaced in the next 20, 30 years by a robo or by some artificial intelligence device. Yeah. So that's the age we live in. So how do you protect yourself from such an obsolescence? Yeah, so how do you beat the artificial intelligence and machine learning and so on? So one of the things would be to specialize in niche areas or specialize in areas where you want to be working. So I think, in a sense, in my opinion, I think masters to do a master's becomes inevitable. Yeah. So I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're curious in a subject or you want to have a better qualification. So if you want to uh, do something, I mean, if you want to be unique or if you want to have a special skill set, then of course you will have to invest that time either through a master's or after doing your bachelor's. While sitting in the industry, you might have to learn, you might have to improve. So many of the people who go into the entrepreneurship or what do you say, this AI, ML, and so on. I think you will notice down the line, maybe in 5 years' time, they might have to do some extra work to certify themselves with a better, what do you say, better tool set and so on and so forth. So learning has become constant. That one has to understand. Yeah. So learning has become constant in our modern times. So it is imperative for all of you to think about what is going to be your special skill. What are you going to be known for? I think this is a question you have to answer. But at the end of the day, you must be honest about things, whether you want a better qualification or you're just interested in science aspect of it or the curiosity aspect of it. If you're going to be curious about something and if you want to learn, then I think research is a good way to begin with. Yeah. But if you just bothered about qualification, then uh, then you should be what do you say? You should be worried about which specialization or which specialization you would like to choose so that you're better equipped to be better qualified and to earn a better salary. Yeah. So I think these two questions are very important, whether I'm really curious about science or I just need a qualification. There is nothing wrong about having a better qualification or looking for money. Yeah. So I think you need not be what do you say, shy about it or embarrassed about it. I think it's good to be honest about what you want, and you should be able to articulate what you want in the most dignified manner. So that would answer the first question, why you should do masters. So this very simple answer is, in this day and age, it is necessary to do a masters. Yeah. So the sub question of it, what are its advantages? So I just spoke about artificial intelligence, but at the end of the day, you would also see that you become a better specialist. Yeah. And then you also are better qualified. So these are the advantages. I mean, they might look simplistic, but I think there is not more to it when you talk about advantages. So to get educated is to become more proficient in what you know. Yeah. So I think you cannot argue when it comes to education whether it's advantages or disadvantages to be educated. So that answers the first question. Yeah. So then we will move on to the second one. What to expect for when opting for dual degree? So I think this is exclusively for the bachelor's, I guess. But in general, when you talk about uh, master's degree, I think it is important to understand that you're going to master something. Yeah. It is not again a routine degree, but it is more of a topic or more of a degree where you master something. So at the end of your masters, you must have mastered something. Yeah, you must have mastered certain concept. And I think that is very important when you think about masters. So even when you immaterial of whether you want to have a better qualification, better degree or something like this, and you want to worry about your curiosity question and so on. So you must understand that you're going to master something, and mastering something requires perseverance, time, and effort. Yeah. So you are going to become an expert in something. So expect yourself to do research on a given topic. Expect yourself to invest a lot of time and energy into mastering it. Yeah. So that's probably one of the biggest things that you would have to expect. Then the second thing that you would have to expect is you would have to be able to write on a certain topic about 40 to 60 pages. Yeah, a scientific document which is worth 60 to 40 to 60 pages, where 70% of the written document is your own thought process. Yeah, so what would be that? So at least when you write 60 pages, at least 40 pages has to be your own thought process, your own conception, your own ideas. Yeah. So that is what you would have to expect. Yeah. So when you do a master's, you're mastering something, and you should be able to articulate that what you've mastered. Yeah. And in modern times, you are also expected to create software libraries. Yeah, I mean, we are in a digital age, and I think that's not going to change. Maybe the form of computing might change from typical binary computing to quantum computing, but the fundamental premise that you would have to create some digital what do you say, contribution does not change. So you would expect yourself to write a software library, or if you're going to work on one of the traditional engineering groups, or so expect yourself to develop a concept, test a concept, and write about it. Yeah. So that is something that you would have to expect. Yeah. So then we'll move on to the third question. What are the career prospects after masters? I mean, simple answer, that depends on how you do your masters. Yeah. Irrespective of how or what and which program you do, it does not matter unless and otherwise you have done it well. Yeah. Unless and otherwise you have done it well, don't expect yourself to have a good prospect. I mean, the prospect really matters because you will have I mean, the prospect matters basically on how you do your masters, how good is your master thesis, or even for that matter, when you do a bachelor's, how good is your bachelor's degree? I mean, how confident are you about the things that you've learned? I think that's what matters at the end of the day. Yeah. So here I would like to talk about three things. One is process, outcome, and template. Yeah, typically uh, you entered a certain degree, or you entered a certain education program because you expected an outcome, right? So let that be money, or let that be a good degree, let that be more knowledge. It does not matter. So that is the outcome that you want to expect. But there is a process to it, right? You sit in the class, or you learn all the things that you're being taught into, you get an understanding of the concept, you work through it, you earn some grades, you earn some points. Yeah. So this is the process. So when you talk about career prospects, or all these sort of things, when it comes to education, the process takes precedence. You must focus on the process, not the outcome. You might want good money, you might want a good degree, it does not matter. As long as you're focused on your process, you would have ended up with the right outcome that you were expecting. Yeah. So you have to put a process in place. But the problem here is that not a lot of people can develop their own process. So they sort of look for templates. Okay, what sort of process should I adopt? So this is one of the areas where currently what I see as problematic areas in the IIT setup, or IIT Kanpur setup. So there is a rage for certain topics to work on. For example, I think everybody goes mad when you say, oh, artificial intelligence and machine learning, it does not matter what. But you sort of, because you think that is going to give you a certain output, so you always end up doing that. So, and there is also influence of your peers when it comes about templates. So you talk to your previous year students, or the master students, or the faculty, and then you try to come up with a template that somebody has followed. So this is where things get problematic. In my opinion, I think any process that you do has to be enjoyable. Yeah, you have to enjoy the process. Yeah, I mean, maybe I sound like a cricket. I sound like cricket commentary. Yeah, but that's true for every other field. You have to enjoy. You have to enjoy what you're doing. Otherwise, you are not going to like the process, and maybe you will not end up with the outcome that you're looking for. So then the next important thing is the process has to be organic. What do I mean by organic here? So that means it must be an outcome of yourself. That means, let's say, if Janvi is going to follow Govind's template, it's not organic. She's just taking Govind's template. Or if Govind is going to follow Nidhi's template, then he's just taking Nidhi's enjoyable process, and he's just fitting it into his life because he sees that that is the outcome that he might get. But the problem lies in the fact that you're just taking a template and you're working through it. I think this is something that you have to break. Yes, of course, you can take ideas. Yes, of course, you can uh, take a few bits and pieces of from somebody else, but I think you have to adapt it to your lifestyle, adapt it to your uh, whims and fancies, or adapt to your imagination. I think so that you enjoy the process. So this is very, very important when you talk about career process. So my suggestion here would be that if you want to have good prospects, develop your own process. See what you like. Ask yourself, do I like this? Do I like this? Yeah. Do I want to do this? Is this something enjoyable to me? Yeah. And my personal feeling is that templates don't work. Yeah. So don't take templates from others blindly. Yeah, have your own template. It is also a mark of laziness when you say, okay, I just want success. I just want success. So let me take a successful template. This is also one of the reasons that in India, the number of books, the type of books that are being sold is self-improvement books. That means we seek advice on how to improve ourselves. Yeah. I think that is to a large extent you can do it on your own. You can think of it is just a question of reflecting on things that you have done previously or how you want to improve upon things. Yeah, so that comes only when you are an avid reader or only when you are doing a lot of work. Let's say, I mean, a lot of reading, a lot of traveling, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so at the end of the day, if you develop your own process and if it's going to be organic, it will take care of the outcome. So your focus should be on a better process and not on your outcome. Of course, you must have ambitions, you must have goals, but that should not uh, dictate your process. The process has to be dictated by what you are and what you are likely to do and what you enjoy to do. Yeah, so inevitably it will end up in a good prospect. So that answers three questions. So now I have a few comments on the general thought process of students or general things that I've observed. So I'm new to this IIT Kanpur setup. I mean, I've been only here for less than 3 years. Yeah, and I've never been in an IIT before that. So, and also let's say I'm in my middle ages. So then there is definitely a generation gap between you and me. Yeah. So there are a few things that I noticed, and I think I would like to share with them. And I would like to call them unfathomable. That means I cannot understand that, and that might be predominantly due to generation gap. But let's exclude that part and let's look at those things. So a lot of you are dependent on YouTube or any of these lecture videos for understanding scientific concepts. I don't say it's a bad thing, but I think you would be better off reading books. You would be better off going to the library and reading things, going over concepts over and over again. I think it helps in a way that uh, because imagination develops when you read, when you don't have visuals in front of you. Yeah. So when as soon as you have visuals, I think it sort of kills your creativity and imagination, because when you know the truth, let's say now if I tell you what does Switzerland look like, you would be imagining in your mind. But as soon as I show you a video, I mean, okay, either you like it or you don't like it. Yeah, but again, I think what I've done is I've killed your imagination. I didn't allow you to imagine what Switzerland would be based on my words. Well, science need not be like that, but I think definitely there is a creative quotient when you read a book. So I would urge all of you to read, go to the library, pick up a physical book or a digital book, and then read it, and then see how a person has articulated his viewpoint. Yeah, that's how you also learn to articulate. When you read more, your vocabulary broadens. You sort of tend to use that vocabulary to articulate your ideas. So it's very important to read your YouTube videos. So when somebody comes and tells me, I didn't find this research topic on YouTube, I mean, I cannot explain to you that you cannot find every research topic on YouTube, and sheer ignorance when you have to go to YouTube to look for content for research topics. And the other thing is, how much should I study? So when you give a sort of a topic for a student to understand, and I think if you're going to ask this question, then I think you should not be thinking about masters. Yeah. So how much should I study? This is what I mean by template. Yeah. So if I read this, I will be able to answer this question. In a sense, your JE actually inculcates this or reinforces this concept of what should I study so that in the given 3 hours I crack this exam. Cracking something is about template. It's about practicing yourself over a template.
Setting the boundaries.
So this is something that one should avoid asking. I mean, you should study as much as you can. You should imbibe as much as you can. And over reliance on AI and ML. I mean, in my day, I think computer was coming to India in a big way because we had the Y2K problem, we had the IT industries. So computer was the go-to tool for us. Before that, I think largely engineering was not digital, or it was more analog. But when I did my engineering, computer came into play, and we had to learn computer programming. But today you see that what was the rage in our day, it's not there anymore. Now IT is more or less a routine industry. Yeah, it is not the industry to look for. Now you talk about AI, ML. So these tools will keep changing. So they have to be seen as tools. Yes, they will provide you a lot of jobs, but I think this is largely what is a corporate advertisement. Yeah, I think because they want people to do a lot of AI, and I think you must also look into the ethical issues of AI. What you're working for, why you're working for. Yeah, so we are living in an age where your democracy, your education, everything is sort of what do you say, that there is a bit of propaganda in that you're being nudged into doing something rather than you wanting to do it. Yeah. So I think there is an ethical question to it. So you have to understand that. Yeah. And the campus interview style we have right now, I mean, you do your JEE, you come here, you work your life off, and then finally you end up in a campus interview. And I hear that they have exams at midnight, they have exams early in the morning, and they have 3 to 4 days away. I mean, why scrutinize so much? This is the question one has to answer. And the problem lies in one aspect which I really think you all should think of. I think IIT and IAC is considered the elite institution of country. Every country will have a set of elite institutions. For example, in the US, you talk about the Ivy League. For example, in the UK, you talk about Cambridge and Oxford. In Germany, you talk about cluster of excellence. So in India, we talk about these IITs. In general, these elite institutes dictate how technology trends or how the future trends are going to be. Yeah. So as youngsters, as people who are looking for jobs, I think you should dictate the terms in terms of how the campus interviews happens and not the other way around. And I think it's fairly simple. If you focus on the things that are taught to you, that are, that are done as engineering here, rather than looking for the outcome, if you go through the process of becoming an engineer, I think much of this can be salvaged, much of this can be reduced. And I think that's where the biggest problem lies with campus. And it's for a lot of people, it's a heartbreaking issue. Huh? I think a lot of people appear in 10, 15 exams, and at the end of the day, you're burned out. Yeah. In fact, an entire semester is spent on these things. So this is something as youngsters you should think through. And I cannot understand why there is no hard requirement on undergraduate project. Yeah. I think a project teaches you how to execute things in a time-bound manner and in a group. Yeah, world over. I mean, I've been in two different countries. Yeah, apart from India, where I've done my research, where I've handled master students or undergrad students, and everywhere you have projects. You have undergraduate projects to finish your uh, thing. I think if even if there is no hard requirement, I would urge all of you to pick up a project in the subject that you like and then do it earnestly. I think a lot of people in the campus do it for the sake of building up your thesis, building up your CV. But I would say, I mean, as a person, as an experienced person, if I would look at your CV and if I would look at your the way you have written your title or something like this, I can immediately figure out whether somebody has done it with the in a honest manner or not. So please take up a project so that you understand how to execute things, so that you deal with data, you deal with a lot of things. Yeah. So that's more or less my unfathomable. Then we talk about some things that I like about the students here. I think they're very organized, and they have the capability to be self-organizing. That means you can organize yourself into groups and do things that you want to do, which is fantastic. And then the third thing that I like about students here is they are very systematic in learning. That means you take up a topic, you are very systematic in how you learn. And that's probably your training or something like this. But these are the things that I like. And I think that can go a long way in propelling you into very good engineers or very good scientists. Yeah. Then some of the things that I would call them dislikes are very rampant. And I think it needs serious rethink. Yeah. One of the biggest problems that we have here is that we criminalize not knowing things. I think every student who comes and asks for a project says, "Oh, I don't know," but then they are too shy or too embarrassed. You should not be embarrassed about not knowing things, or you should not criminalize somebody for not knowing things. Yeah. So, for example, when I started as a teacher here or an assistant professor, I think some of the things that I was not aware of, but then immediately there was a tension between students, or some students would discredit you, saying that you don't know, he doesn't know anything or something like this. So this happens to also your peers. I mean, if somebody doesn't tells you they don't know something, then we sort of pass a judgment. We become judgmental on their intellect, and I think this is a pan-Indian problem, and I think we should not be ashamed of not knowing things. We should be ashamed when we say we know and then we don't know. Yeah, I think that is something of a shame. So when you don't know things, it's good to be honest and agree, and then try to learn it, try to understand it. Yeah. Then the other thing is, nearly every aspect of our life here is hierarchical. Yeah. So you have seniors, you have juniors, you have what do you say? You have, and you also have parallel universes. Huh? The students have a parallel universe, the faculty has a parallel universe, the technical staff has a parallel universe, and I think this is not very healthy. Yeah? I think these are power structures and they struggle with each other, and there is a sort of hierarchy in there. But this is not something for you to solve, but this is uh, something for you to understand and work towards eradicating, at least at your level. Because in the universe, if you travel outside, if you go to US or Germany or Australia, there is no concept of senior junior. It's just that, oh, he finished that year, I finished this year. or you want to do nuclear research, I think it's important for the society. But we don't need thousands and thousands of nuclear scientists. Yeah, I mean, we just need a bunch of people, yeah, so who are doing such sort of research. Yeah, so this is sort of a niche area, and I think as students of elite institutions, you should you should really like to work in niche areas, because this is really the place where the whole country needs you, or we need specialists. So for example, India is leading in a lot of fields, but it is also not leading in many fields. Yeah, we don't have anybody who represents us in the international forum. Yeah, for example, when it comes to geodesy, which is what I do, we don't have any representatives in the international fora. Yeah, and we don't have anybody who devises international policy, or who formulates or who guides international policy for the benefit of our country. I think if you largely see, many of the international bodies are filled with a lot of Europeans or Americans, and these days it's a lot of Chinese people as well. So if we want to have a safer place on the planet, or if we want to have some geopolitical power, I think we need to work on niche areas, and we need to have people sitting in these power structures, international fora, where we can have people who can develop policies that do not hinder our country's progress. So this is something that you really have to think about. Yeah. And the other thing is lack of attention to detail. I think here, when we do work, I mean, at all levels, undergrad, grad, PhD, postdoc, at all levels, there is lack of attention to detail and lack of an aesthetic sense. So when you present your work, I mean, it largely looks rough, it largely looks unfinished, and also the type of problems that we pick up are really low-hanging fruits. Yeah, so this is again an issue that we have to, as youngsters, you will have to address. I mean, it's always when you talk about research, or when you talk about things, it's easier to publish papers on certain things. So people, in terms of trying to bring some outcomes, they sort of pick these low hanging fruits, and that is not going to be helpful in the long run. Yeah. So if we want to be good at research, or if we want to be doing at the cutting edge of research, then we should not be looking at the outcome, but we should look at the process. You should understand the concepts, you should understand the research, you should pay attention to details. Yeah. So for example, I mean, if I would give you a choice of a BMW Smart and a Tata Nano, which one would you buy? I think, sorry?
BMW, that depends on how much we have, money we have.
Let's say money is not an issue.
Of course, BMW.
Why that? Why not Tata Nano?
Like difference in the features that that car has.
Why do you think that is there? Why do you think the
Because they have worked more on small details, and Tata Nano it's just a car, but that's something which has every detail in it, every comfort that can be provided. They have worked on each and every detail that the car should have.
yes, I think it's very important to understand this. I think attention to detail is what makes engineering special. Yeah. So if you're going to build a motor car, and of course the car will run, but I think whether it vibrates, or it makes noise, or the seats are uncomfortable, and these are the things that you worry about. Same way, for any aspect of research, there will always be these special details. Of course, you can develop a concept, but then how uh, uh, how how much details you have looked into, how much angles you have looked into, is what matters at the end of the day. So these are the things that I would like to say. And my final 2 cents would be, before we go to the question and answer session, would be that irrespective of what you want to do in life, I mean, read a lot of books. Yeah, both in your mother tongue and in English. Yeah, because the Francois lingua is English. So then I think we have to learn that. We have to be articulate in that. So read a lot of books. But when I say books, it's not about how to become rich or how to, or not the self-improvement books. Read a lot of fiction. Read a lot of non-fiction. Read a lot of politics and so on and so forth. So you should also, it doesn't matter whether you're left wing or right wing or centrist, you should read all ideologies and you should come to your own conclusions. Yeah. And the second thing that you have to do is travel far and wide. Get out of your comfort zone. Yeah, don't stick to your, if you're North Indian, don't stick to your chapati, dal and things like this. Go somewhere else where they don't eat that, where they don't speak your language. If you're South Indian, you don't eat your rice, sambar, rasam, or whatever. I mean, you just move out of your comfort zone and then explore things. I think it's very important to experience cultures, so that your mind opens up. I mean, it is not describable in words, but it just makes you open, more open minded. It just lets you to have another person's perspective. Yeah. So, and you will understand the struggles of not knowing their culture, not knowing their language, not knowing how to communicate. So you develop empathy. I think it's very, very important to travel far and wide and not go to touristic destinations where everything is made convenient. You should go to a touristic destinations, yeah, where you will be on your own, where you will be out of your comfort zone, yeah, and learn about different cultures and learn different languages. Yeah, apart from your mother tongue and English, learn a few more languages so you have an idea of what is language complexity and so on and so forth. And have a hobby. When I say hobby, I'm not talking about reading books or watching movies. Yeah, when I say hobby, it's like either gardening or what do you say, cycle repairing or building some Lego. Even building Legos is a fantastic hobby to have. Yeah, or trying to develop new games or origami for that matter. Yeah. And last but not least, whatever you do, have your own high standards, very high standards for yourself. I mean, what that will do is that you will not satisfy yourself with less, and that will bring a sort of quality to your own work, your own output. Yeah. So I think when I say process, the process also has to have very high standards that you don't get easily satisfied with things. Yeah. So that concludes my sermon, my lecture, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So thanks again. So if you have any questions, we can discuss that.
If anyone amongst the audience have any questions, you can unmute themselves and ask.
Mhm. So are there any questions in the forms? Has anybody filled the
Yes,
Google?
yes, we circulated the form to collect the questions. So some of the questions were pretty much common. And like first one was, can we apply for more than one program? Like geoinformatics also and structural also, like two at the same time.
Oh, that's a technical question that has to be answered by DOA or things like this. That is something that I am not aware of. Well, you can, I mean, when you are interested in a few subjects, you talk to people. It's also about the relationship between your supervisor and you is very, very critical in when you do graduation or even when you do a PhD. I think you should work with people whom you're comfortable working with or you like their working style. Sometimes the working styles might not match. Some professors tend to be more control freaks. Some professors tend to be overly liberal. So what works for you? Do you enjoy a lot of freedom or do you enjoy a lot of control? So it depends. So not only the subject, I would say also discuss and see how the how the person that you want to work with works and whether it would fit your bill. But definitely, I think you can, if you're interested in part of structures, you can also, there are also opportunities now to do transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary research. So why not? I think you can always have two supervisors. But again, the question is whether the two supervisors interact or how the dynamics happens is also very important.
Next question was, I am not a very sharp student, but I want to do a master's. Will I be able to manage a dual degree?
I don't agree to the point that you're somebody is sharp. I mean, when you say, I don't know whether you don't pick up concepts quickly or something like this, I would say it's advantageous. Uh, in science, what we generally do is we always have to question the agreed upon knowledge, because if we agree to what has been agreed upon, then we don't progress. So I think I see a benefit in not being sharp, because then you have not understood it. So you take time, you delve into it. You don't agree easily to the concepts. So you are more likely to uh, pursue the fundamental questions. You're more likely to question the agreed upon knowledge. So I don't see it as a problem. I think it's largely about whether you're interested in something, whether you're comfortable providing new ideas. Are you able to generate new ideas? Are you able to enjoy it? I think you should not be worried about whether you're sharp or not. Yeah.
The next question was, what are the opportunities that lie in the intersection of data science, deep learning, and geoinformatics?
As I said, I mean, see, data analysis is basically data analysis. We have been doing data analysis for ages. And many of you might not be knowing that artificial intelligence and machine learning, or all these have these uh, beginnings in old remote sensing images. When remote sensing images became routine, I think one of the first things that they did was pattern recognition. I think now we don't use the word because it's part and parcel of machine learning. When you use a video, or for that matter, when you are looking for patterns within words, you call it machine learning. But in the old parlance, you would call it pattern recognition. And this is not new. I mean, we wanted to learn about patterns. We wanted to have technologies that were useful for understanding patterns. So data analysis uh, is overall. That means it's common for every aspect of science, every aspect of engineering. You can use artificial intelligence in mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, civil engineering, every aspect of engineering. But how you use it, why you use it is more important. Yeah. And if you want to use it in a domain specific field, I think you must have a domain specific expertise. Yeah, because you can also develop tools, but I think when you say developing machine learning, it's the bread and butter of computer science engineers. So in a way, when you start developing the tools, you are actually getting out of your expertise zone, and you're fighting with somebody else whose expertise is data engineering. So I would say treat it as a tool and try to use it. But I think that's not the be end, or uh, the one and only panacea for everything in life. I mean, there is much more than artificial intelligence and machine learning to engineering. Yeah. So think beyond machine learning and artificial intelligence. I would urge all of you to pick up magazines. I think there are quite a few magazines that come out on different topics for structural engineering, for geoinformatics, or for that matter. I mean, if you're interested in geodesy, you should probably become a member of American Geophysical Union. They publish a very nice monthly magazine called EOS. It's very nice. I think you can read that to understand what people are doing, what people are trying to achieve. So that way you are more interested in things, or it allows you to think beyond machine learning and artificial intelligence. Yeah.
So next question was like, I'm interested in doing masters, but what if I end up doing a job for which a master degree leaves me overqualified for it?
then you're doing the wrong job. Well, yeah, no, I mean, these are speculative questions. Like I said, I mean, focus on the process. When you do a master's, focus on your masters, and make yourself a specialist in something, so that when you apply for jobs, then people are immediately asking for you. Make yourself, what do you say, uh, very easily absorbable, in the sense that your expertise should speak for you, not that you have to be go and saying, I am the expert, I am the expert. I mean, your work, your knowledge level should talk about your expertise. So for, again, I would say focus on the process and leave the outcomes to the outcomes. I mean, the outcomes are dependent on the process. So when you don't focus on doing your masters well, or doing the things that you want to do well, you're not going to end up with a better job. So I would say don't worry about those things. Yeah, you will never be overqualified if you do the right kind of work, and you will end up in the right job. Yeah.
And so next question was, I want to do a master's, but I'm a bit confused. Should I extend my degree into a dual degree, or should I go for master's from any other country, US or UK?
Well, I mean, you should. If I would go by the tenets that I put forward, I would say you finish your bachelor's and move on. But if you don't have the means, or if you don't have, if you're reluctant, if you have family issues that don't allow you to go, then I think fair enough, you can stay. But I would definitely urge you to experience a different world. I mean, US and Europe, even Australia for that matter, or Singapore. There are many places where you can do your research. For example, Canada. Also, there are good universities in Chile, or in South America. So that's something that you can also do. I mean, so it doesn't matter. But it would be nice for you to also explore a different culture. And to a large extent, if I say different culture, if you go to US, then you will only be with Indians again. So that would steal you off the real experience of being in a different country. So yeah, I mean, if you're going to do a master's, then yeah, fine. If you have the means, yeah, you can definitely aim elsewhere. Yes.
And so the most common question, a bit disturbing one also, was, will I earn more if I do a master's? And which other companies would hire me after doing a master's in geoinformatics? And another most common one was, what is the average salary which these companies give?
I must say I've never been a person inclined doing a corporate job. So even in my undergrad days, I never sat in any campus interview, because I know I'm not going to do that. So I never pursued that. So maybe I'm not the right person to answer how much salary you will get. But one must understand, this is also something that I forgot to mention during my talk. I think important thing to understand is that when you do research, you are developing something new. Yeah. And you have, for example, in Germany, when people do their masters or their PhD, they sort of develop something, and then they also go to the extent of making it a patent, and then taking their concept, whatever they developed during the masters or their doctorate, and setting up an industry based on that. For example, there is a company called Geo++. It's a German company based in Hanover. So the person who worked for it was doing research in GNSS. So he sort of finished his thesis, and then he finished his doctorate, and then based on the work that he did, he took that. I think at that point, GNSS was still a niche area. It was not as common as it is right now. So he took that concept, and then he started developing his own industry. And maybe you're not aware of Geo++, but I think they do a lot of cutting edge work. They develop some of the leading technologies which companies like Bosch or Fugro or something like this, they imbibe. So they are so this is basically something that you can also think about when you do masters. You can work towards developing some technology or developing some ideas which you can also monetize through developing a company or something like this. For example, we also have Kritsnam Technologies in IIT Kanpur through the SIDBI. So these people, most of them have done their masters within the IIT Kanpur setup, and I think the head is also a BTMT student, and I think he has developed his own company. He develops hydrological sensors, he installs them. So I think you should also think in those terms, yeah. And it's sad that I think we have a very high unemployment rate at this point. So it would be better off that you think through the route of SIDBI. I mean, it was also not uncommon in the 70s and 80s that a lot of undergrad students would pull up money and then they would do some sort of new job. But what I would advise against is starting another service-oriented company, something like Big Basket or something like Swiggy, or because you're not generating any new product or something like this. All you're doing is service. You're being a middleman. I mean, I mean, I cannot. Uh, I cannot support something when a student from an elite institute, comes up and starts a middle. I mean, what is this sort of middleman sort of service-oriented industry? I mean, we should think about satellites. I mean, satellite building is a big industry. I think in the US, a lot of undergrads who are aerospace engineers or who are structural engineers, I think they develop a lot of new ways of building cheap and satellites. And there are also other issues. For example, I mean, water resource is very, very critical, and it is going to become a meager resource in the future. So as civil engineers, there is a lot of scope in developing new ideas and new technologies for safeguarding us, safeguarding the humanity from climate change. So you can think of those things. So let us not be worried too much about, of course, if you want a good job, yeah, yes, you can earn a lot of money, but then whatever you provide must be very unique. Yeah, I mean, when BMW or Mercedes, when they sell their cars, or Ferrari, when they sell their cars, it is for a reason that they put a high price tag and people are willing to pay. Yeah. So unless and otherwise you sit and become an expert in something that you make yourself worthy of that money, don't expect that money. So I think once again we go back to the concept of focusing on the process. So focus on what you're learning, how you're doing it, and attention to details, expertise, and all these things should be at your forefront. So then automatically you will be you will be there'll be a line for you waiting to pick you up, and then you can be the chooser. Yeah, you can choose your job. Yeah. I mean, I'm not glorifying anything here. I'm not saying. I mean, this is the truth. Huh? It might look utopian, but this is certainly doable. It is not utopian. I think it is certainly doable, and I think many of you should aspire to do this.
So there was one question. Can a water resource master student pursue PhD in transportation after completion of the master's?
Well, why not? If your supervisor is willing to, so you must have a reason for switching, or you must have an idea to switch. I mean, there is no reason why you should be doing that. But suddenly, when you started doing, you must have chosen water resources for a reason, and now you must be switching to something else because for a reason. So as long as you're clear why you're doing that, and again, it should not be driven by the market. Yeah. uh, I think it should be driven by what you want to do. If you're going to, so this is what also I was talking about the campus interview style, because all of us tend to do what the market wants us to do. They dictate terms, right? The market wants us to read AI and ML. The market wants us to be expert at programming or something like this. But as a Elite Engineering Institute students, I think you must have a cutting edge over them. You must dictate terms. See, we are experts of these. Would you like to have us? So then the complete dynamic will change. The way the campus interview done is will change. So you must aspire to do what you like to do, so that when things come, you can easily say, this is not something that I want to do. Yeah, I'm not interested in that. That does not mean that you should not be aware of where the trend is going. But then who's saying where the trend is going is also important. When Google says, when Microsoft says, they don't have your best interests in mind, because they just want people to uh, put forward the agenda that they have. Yeah, and then they want to they want to have a workforce that works their agenda out and then brings them forward. But that need not be for the benefit of the humankind, or that need not be for the benefit of the society, or not also for your personal benefit. Yeah. So I think there are ethical issues. There are these sort of what do you say, sociological issues. So as students of Elite Institute, I think you should think through these lines. You should be able to dictate terms and who is hiring you. Yeah, they come here for a reason. Yeah, they come here because they think you are some of the brightest and the best possible workforce they can get. So in a sense, you must turn the table and say, hey, I'm not interested in doing this. I'm interested in doing this. Would you have a job for me? Right? I think, and that is certainly doable. And it's just a question of change in thought process.
So, if anyone in the audience have any question for sir, then please unmute yourself and you can ask.
You can also use the chat box if you're shy.
Yes,
Mhm. Well, I don't see any questions. So, yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yes, Ashish.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, Ashish.
So, how is a PhD program different from an MTech program? So, would you like to explain?
It's the breadth and width and depth of the problem that you work in a master's. Maybe let's say if you wanted to pursue a master's, you can sort of replicate somebody's work in a different way, and you could still earn a master's. But I think at a PhD, there must be, you must have definitely taken a problem, and you must have moved it forward at least a few inches, if not a few meters. Yeah. So how broad and how deep uh, you treat the problem is more important at a PhD level. You go to the philosophical extent. Yeah, at a master's level, you probably are going to master some technique, or master some. Let's say I will go into your parlance of AI and ML. Maybe you want to apply AI and ML to something. You sort of, you apply it and then you test it, you compare it. Okay, fine. That's fine for a master's. But for a PhD level, you sort of think through a new line of applying it, or you sort of come up with an innovative way of applying it. Yeah. And use it for problems that have never used AI or something like this. So there are multiple scenarios. But again, when you develop it, how far you've gone into a certain either you have developed new methods of AI, or you have, improve the understanding that we had by using AI. So these things matter when you do a PhD.
So, the master's is more like learning, understanding, and
It's the
specializing.
first phase towards a research topic. Yeah. So let's say now you want to do a master's in geoinformatics. Maybe you get a taste of what that subject domain is. Yeah, what the data looks like. What are the research topics that people look into? Yeah, it's just getting a taste of what is being done. Yeah, but for a PhD, you're literally contributing to the body of knowledge that is already existing. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, What is the difference between PhD in India and in foreign? And there is a duration gap for PhD in India and PhD in foreign. Why so?
The problem is the way we have structured our what is it called? The way we have structured our courses. Yeah, PhD. Here, I think in India, even at the master's level and PhD, there is more emphasis on doing coursework. It's all course based. So that's why when you tell your parents when you're going to do a PhD, they think, oh, this guy is just going to study. Yeah, they don't treat it as work. But when you are in abroad, when you say PhD, then people really understand that you're going to work. Yeah, PhD is considered as work, or masters is considered as work, and that's why you're also being paid for work. Yeah, here we call it a stipend, and we ask you to do coursework and so on. So I think that's where the problem is, or maybe not a problem, but yeah, the thought process that we emphasize more on coursework, more on theoretical rigor, and so on and so forth. But if you go abroad, let's say if you want to do a master's, so you will be taking courses that are not predefined. Yeah, so you will have a research topic up front. By the time you end up there, you will know what you're going to work on. So you will then choose the courses that will benefit your research. Yeah, so that's how things are done. But here, when you join masters, you do your masters for 1 year. Then you think about your research topic, then you go into the research topic, and then you do research. Same holds for PhD. Yeah, you start your PhD, you do your courses, then you work on the research problem, then you write your candidacy, then you write your they do your state of the art seminar, and so on. So in my opinion, you cannot talk about state of the art unless and otherwise you've dealt with the data, you've worked through the data, and so on. Yeah, you can only talk about the state of the art after you've involved yourself in a certain research topic. So basically, just by doing a literature review, one is not going to understand what is the state of the art. And a lot of things might look very cool and very interesting, but they might not be of interest to you once you start dealing with the data. So I think it's imperative. So this is basically the difference. So when I started my PhD, I mean, I knew what I was going to do, and I was particularly looking into that. And then later on, I diversified myself by reading into other things and developing on the sides. So you start at a certain point and you grow. So here you're let in a forest, and then you sort of find your central point or something like this. So that's the difference. I mean, so for some people, the second way might work. For some people, the first way might work. So these are different things. Yeah. So it is a question of perspective. But there is, I feel, for me, I think what worked for me, that I was let independent. I was allowed the time to deal into things, work through things, and I think that worked for me. And I also learned a lot through the time. So it also depends which sort of procedure works for you. This also matters. Yeah.
Sir, I have one more.
Yeah.
What
Please.
are the what are the kind of suggestions or advices that you give to a student who just enrolled in PhD in India in IITK?
Are you a PhD student, Mahesh?
No, no, sir, I'm a master student.
Yeah. So what sort of advice do you seek? I don't know. I mean, it's a very vague question. So let me try to answer that. The point is, I think when you go into a PhD, uh, you should have the exuberance and the determination. And I think there are four ingredients, in my opinion, for success at the graduate level. Yeah. One is sincerity, and then the other thing is honesty, then the other thing is dedication, and the final thing is integrity. Yeah, sincerity. I think when you choose something, when you have PhD is more about mental strength rather than about intellect or being a genius. Yeah, it's about determination. You will, because you will not know what is the output that you're going to give. Yeah, your output is unknown. Your input is also unknown. Yeah, the only thing that you bank on is your knowledge level. Yeah, you say, I have a certain skill set. With that, I can take some input and give some output. So, and that is where a lot of things happen. What sort of input you give and what sort of output you give. Your input will almost always dictate output. There is a famous saying in control theory. It's called garbage in, garbage out. Yeah, you throw garbage as input, you cannot expect gold as output. Yeah, that would be called alchemy, but alchemy is not true. So you should focus on what I mean. Attend a few conferences, look into what do you say, magazines, look into talks. Yeah, I think this is where YouTube can help you. If there are recordings of some people who discuss some of the subject topics, you can work through it. I mean, in almost invariably, all the universities now have a what do you call uh, the YouTube channels, and also I think for starters, we also tried to do this lecture series some time ago. I think we had 4 or 5 speakers so far speaking in our National Center for Geography lecture series. So attend those lectures and see what people are working. I mean, I think that should already give you an idea of what is happening in the field. But immerse yourself into the data that you want to work with, or take up some small projects and do them. Yeah, I think it's very important that you handle data, you be open to ideas, and so on and so forth. Don't be rigid, be a bit more flexible, and choose the right person you want to work with. I think that's again a big ingredient in becoming a good PhD student or something like this. Yeah, that's why I spoke about your work ethic and your supervisor's work ethic. I think they have to match, they have to be in sync, or at least the supervisor must be happy with your work ethic. Otherwise, things can go very wrong. Yeah, I don't know if I've answered your question. If you have any specific things that you seek advice, then let me know. Mhm. Any other questions? Okay. Yeah, feel free to contact me by email, or yeah, and if you want to have one-on-one meetings, I'm more than happy to do that.
So if we do not have any more question, I will request the audience and all the other coordinators to switch on their video so that we can take a last screenshot for the session.
Nice.
Nidhi, Rohan, Govind, and everyone in the audience whose service, it's your wish.
I think everybody's shy.
I will request at least the coordinators to switch on their videos. And the audience also. So this is not any kind of formal session, it was a bit informal itself. So I request everyone to switch on the videos. Mhm.
I would like to audience to also on their camera if possible. And Nidhi.
I know a few faces here. Mhm. No, I'm not going to hunt you down if you're going to open your cameras. Don't be worried. You're safe. Gaurav, good. I think I should call out names then, huh? Okay.
I would request Nidhi to switch on her camera.
This is no paparazzi, huh? We are not going to sell your images for money. I hope so, Janu.
No, we are not.
Okay, good.
This is just for memory.
Yeah. I think we have a critical mass. So Nidhi, Avadi, Rishabh, Sandeep, Aditya, Udit, Neeraj. Okay, let's have a picture then.
So that's
Yeah.
fun.
Okay, fantastic.
Thank you guys for joining, and thank you very much, sir, for taking this
My
time
pleasure.
out for explaining us how important it is.
Yeah, thank you for
Thank you, sir.
inviting me. I think I should thank you guys more than you thank me. Yeah. Thanks also to the participants for joining. Take care, guys. See you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.